Welcome to the Pulse of Peter B. I'm your host, Peter Biancamano, and we are live at Columbus Gardens for their neighborhood barbecue here in Hoboken. We want to thank you for joining us on your one-stop shop for sports picks, politics and government chatter, and even some neighborhood restaurant reviews. Instead of going to 3 different channels, you can come here every week for the Pulse on everything you need to know. And we're going to have a little bit of a different show this week, as we are going to have our Politics with Peter B segment at the beginning and the end of the show. And then we'll have Matt Waymeyer join us for our sports picks in the middle, because we are joined, of course, by Josh Sotomayor Einstein. Josh, nice to see you today outside.
Always good to be here. Beautiful
Brought the hat
day.
back outside.
You know it.
Scared of a sunburn or something? Or?
I burn easily.
You burn easily. I like that. So Josh has to get back to the grill in the middle segment, and that's exactly why he's here for the beginning and the end of the show. But why don't we jump right in for our topic here in the first segment. This week, many Hoboken residents received a phone poll, which the focus seemed to be on the upcoming city council elections this fall. You were one of those people who received the call and actually went through with it and didn't hang up. One of the few, I might add. Was wondering if you can explain to the audience, A, what the call actually entailed, and B, most people seem to think that this came straight out of the mayor's office. What do you think?
So it definitely came from the mayor's office or someone affiliated or pro the administration, because there was questions that asked, would you support a candidate more or less if they had the mayor's backing? Questions about the direction of the city, and questions about city councilors that were, and also an additional person that's not on city council, Phil Cohen, who's very connected and in the mayor's camp.
But he's also the chairman of the Hoboken Democratic Party.
And he's a rumored possible candidate for council against one of the anti-Bala people in the wards. And he was the only Hoboken person that was asked about that wasn't a council person. Now, they did also ask about Donald Trump. And they asked if one was a Republican or a Democrat, if one is a renter or a homeowner, and questions like that, which I think are very interesting and illustrative of what the Bala administration is going for. What they did last time is also informative. They're really trying to pump out, it seems like they're really trying to pump out the progressive Democrats and trying to convince progressive Democrats that they're the authentic home of what it means to be a progressive Democrat, not their potential opposition or the anti-Bala people on the city council.
Very, very interesting. Now, it's quite interesting because besides First Ward Councilman Michael DeFusco, there are actually no other declared candidates in the race right now. So do you really believe that a poll like this is a waste of money because they don't even know who's running yet?
Well, I think it's if you have the money to spend, it's not a bad idea to try to get a pulse on where the community is going.
I like that. You see that, folks? He's bringing in the pulse now.
Yeah, the pulse on Peter B. But it's a smart idea. If you have it's not a necessary thing for political campaigns, but if you have the extra shekels, you might as well spend it. And all indications are is that the mayor is going to push hard against Fisher, against Giattino, possibly against DeFusco, possibly against Cunningham. So if you're trying to get a pulse on where he wants to understand where the city is going from the perspective of potential voters, it's smart politics.
It is smart politics, and I guess, like you said, if you do have the money, you might as well spend it on the poll. Now, do you believe that most people are truthful in these type of polls? I'm sure an abundant amount of people basically don't believe that their answers are going to remain anonymous. So anybody that goes through with it, like yourself, do you think they're actually telling the truth?
Oh, no, I lied on the poll.
Oh, there you go.
100%.
There you go.
Because, for example, everybody knows that I'm a Republican. If I would have said I'm a Republican, when the person that's giving these questions has a script, and the script depends on the people's answers. So I lie on these polls because I want to know as much of the questions as possible. If I said yes to I'm a Republican, and I am a very proud Republican, the poll would have closed. It would have been done. It would have been over. They would have been like, okay, goodbye. Because if we look from last race, we saw that Bala and his cadre, they run as progressive Democrats. They're not interested in what Republican or even centrist-leaning unaffiliated or independents have to say. They're if past this prologue, they're going to try to pump out the progressive base, and that's going to be that. So if I would have said, yes, I am a Republican, And I am a proud Republican. I'm on the state committee of the GOP, all right? Could not be more proud.
As we know from the great debate that we just had a few weeks ago.
And I don't lie about it in any other venue. But if I'm getting an anonymous poll, I want to know the entirety of the questions. So I'm gonna say what I need to say to try to get asked the entire thing.
It's interesting, and going back to what you said earlier, that they mentioned Phil Cohen, the chairman of the Hoboken Democratic Party, here in town in the poll, who's a rumored candidate to be going against Councilman Cunningham in the 5th Ward. Do you see the Ball administration actually doing more polls where there's hypothetical candidates in other wards, let's say against Fisher or Giattino or DeFusco or so on and so forth? Does he have literally that much money saved in his bank where he can continue to do polls that are ward-centric?
Well, we definitely have to look it up to see how much cash that he has on hand.
And you could look that up. That's public information, unless it's coming from a PAC, of course, correct?
That's true, unless it's coming from the PAC. But what we do know from last election is that he has an amazing ability, almost the gift of gold, right? He's the goose that laid the golden egg in terms of fundraising. Him and Councilman DeFusco have huge war chests, or the ability to build huge war chests.
Which might be a hypothetical matchup for mayor.
Yeah, and it probably will be next mayoral go around.
Right.
But the real question is how many polls can you do before your side starts to look like you just blow with the wind?
Right.
Because there's also whether it's right or wrong. I think it's right, but I understand the argument that it would be wrong. But whether it's right or wrong aside, when you do so many polls, you get a perception amongst the public that you don't have any firm beliefs, and you're just going to be a leaf in the wind, blowing whichever way that the public mood at that moment says to go.
Very, very interesting. One other question here. Wondering if polling matters. I mean, there have been plenty of polls done when the election came about. The polling has been severely inaccurate. And obviously the presidential election just 3 years ago, or 2 years ago, whenever it was, had, of course, Hillary Clinton leading, and then your boy Donald Trump becoming victorious.
Don't forget to mention the Brexit polls over in the
Very
United
true.
Kingdom.
I mean, they were severely inaccurate. So does polling actually matter? And if it doesn't, and I'm going to go back to this, why waste money on it?
Well, it's a tool. So if you have the extra shekels, you might as well spend it. It shouldn't be, determinative of what you're going to do, but it can be used to make an informed decision. Rather than just a guesstimate, you get to make an estimate, right?
Right.
You have more data, and more data is never wrong, unless philosophically it stops you from being able to make a decision, right? So you have to have the mindset that you're not going to get swamped by all the data, but that it's going to be informative and it's going to help you build to a decision in terms of whether or not you're going to pull the trigger on a run or who you're going to support. Policy-wise, I hate politicians that have to poll to figure out what their priorities should be. They should know that when they decide to run. They should know that before they get sworn into office. Those type of politicians I hate, and we need less of in the country.
Interesting. Very, very interesting. We do have a few seconds here. You said that you were inaccurate when it came to the question on the presidency.
Oh, I lied.
Okay, fine. I didn't want to say
it's
it.
not inaccurate. Let's not make any bones about it.
What about the questions on the local officials? Do you feel like you told the truth? I'm not telling you what to. What your answers were.
So I do not lie except on polls. Okay. All right. But I gave them all a thumbs down. I won't say it was a graduated scale from strongly like, dislike, strongly dislike. So the greatest that I gave any of our elected officials was dislike. But most of them got strongly dislike because they don't do a good job.
Exactly. Well, Josh Einstein, he's going to be back for our third segment. He has to get back to the grill. Folks, when we come back, our picks with Peter B segment, and we have Matt Waymeyer joining us. Stay tuned, everybody. Peter Biancamano, your hostess with the mostest of the Pulse with Peter B. Folks, we're only on once a week, but you can go on our Facebook page. In your search bar, type in the Pulse with Peter B. We're consistently updating new information on there. And then if you have a question for our sports insiders, for Josh, for our food insiders, and even for me, we'll be more than happy to get back to you and answer those questions. Go on Facebook, like, and follow us. Welcome back to the Pulse with Peter B. I'm your host, Peter Biancamano, and this is our Picks with Peter B segment, joined live here at Columbus Gardens by former NHL Digital host NBC Sports anchor and News 12 sports reporter, our favorite, Mr. Matt Waymeyer. Matt, what's going on? I know. I always put the pressure on, Matt.
I know.
And
I gotta deliver.
And you know why I'm excited. And I know why you're excited as well, because today, after fighting with Greg, my producer, for months and months and months, we are going to be talking about the NHL playoffs because, of course, the conference finals are underway. So why don't we begin with the Eastern Conference Finals?
Sure.
And your Bruins,
My Bruins.
his Bruins, are taking on the Carolina Hurricanes. Now, the Bruins did take game one the other night,
Yes.
as we both know.
Yes.
However, the Hurricanes have a strange habit of making their sporadic playoff appearances count. They have made the playoffs, Matt, just four times, folks, since 2002,
Wow.
and have made the conference finals in every single one of those years that they've made the playoffs. What are your thoughts?
I mean, I think if you ask most fans, would you rather have this or would you rather have a team that makes the playoffs every year but gets bounced in the first or second round? They'd say, I would take the Hurricanes model.
Exactly.
We don't get there that often, but when we get there, we make the most of it. And alas, like you said, every time they do make the postseason, which isn't often, but they make the most of their opportunities and they're in the conference final, 4 wins away from a Stanley Cup final. I don't want that to happen. I'm a Bruins fan.
Who are 3 wins away?
Yes. Bruins taking game one, long way to go, but a good start for the Bruins. What's interesting about the Hurricanes, and I don't know if you're aware of this or most hockey fans in general, but they've had this feud going with Don Cherry, who's
right.
the preeminent hockey analyst in Canada.
I was hoping you were going to wear one of his jackets.
If I owned one, I would have. I don't know if I could pull it off quite like Don Cherry. But for those not in the know, he's kind of the equivalent of Walt Clyde Frazier in terms of the flamboyant
That
outfits.
is a very good analogy.
They kind of go hand in hand.
Absolutely, yeah.
So he is their version of Walt Clyde Frazier, whom Knicks fans obviously are familiar with. But earlier in the season, he called the Hurricanes, and I quote, a bunch of jerks for their antics and their theatrics, for their post-game celebrations. It's not old school. It's, he's one of these guys that doesn't believe in any of that stuff. And the Hurricanes are trying to have fun, endear themselves to their fan base, which they've done in spades. But Don Cherry went so far as to call them a bunch of jerks. But Carolina, in turn, they've taken this and they've run with it. They've branded the phrase. It's great.
But by the way, some of the antics that Don Cherry was talking about was possibly doing the limbo under a hockey stick.
They did like human bowling pins and.
Look, when was the last time the NHL had flavor?
Well, that's my point. I mean, I love, as just an impartial fan, a fan of hockey, I love what the Hurricanes are doing.
Exactly.
This is a game, folks. It's meant to, yes, it's a big business. Yes, there's a lot at stake. It's a game.
Exactly.
Have fun with it. It's the thing is, if they were showing up their opponent, that's one thing. They're just they're doing it to entertain themselves and their fans. Nobody's getting shown up. That's not what this is about. So if they cross that line, I might side with Don Cherry. I can't side with him on this. Hats off to the Hurricanes for what they've done. It's going to be a great environment in games 3 and 4 when the series shifts.
Absolutely. Now, let's get to the actual series.
Yes.
So the Boston Bruins now are the favorites, unfortunately. And because they do have the deepest and most complete team, they do have veterans compared.
Won't argue that.
Pasternak and Marchand compared with their young players like Charlie McAvoy and so on and so forth. However, the Lightning, they won this season a record-tying 62 games during the regular season, and they were swept in the first round by the Columbus Blue Jackets. I mean, so being the favorite is not necessarily a good thing in the NHL playoffs this season. So objectively, Matt, I need an objective answer. Where do you see the series going?
Here's the thing with what happened to Tampa Bay. They took their foot off the gas pedal when they were up in game 1, 3-0 at home.
Correct.
They thought they were going to cruise.
At
Columbus
the end of the
came
second
back.
period
I believe, yeah. So 3-0 game at home. They took their foot off the gas. Columbus came back and shocked them. I don't think they recovered from that because they took on a Columbus team, very aggressive forecheck, heavy physical presence. A great goaltender, Sergei Bobrovsky. Tampa Bay was not ready for any of this, and they got blitzed. They lost their best player in Game 3 to suspension, Nikita Kucherov, and all these things added up, and they got swept. So, yes, they were the favorite, but I think it's a different situation with the Bruins. They're not underestimating anybody. They knew Toronto was tough in round 1. Columbus was very tough in round 2. Carolina's going to be tough here in round 3. So, whereas I think Tampa Bay, they didn't face adversity all year. They underestimated their first-round opponent, and it bit them. The Bruins aren't going to be guilty of any of that. They've been through these battles before. They're not going to take Carolina lightly, like I think Tampa Bay did with Columbus.
So Bruins in what?
I'll say Bruins is 7. I think
like
Carolina's going to
that.
put up a hell of a
It's
fight.
going to be a long series.
Yeah,
Rod
Bruins have
Brind'Amour.
home ice. I do think they're the better team. Carolina's going to put up a fight. I still like the Bruins in 7.
And kudos to Rod Brind'Amour, by the way.
Oh,
Totally changing
what a
around
job.
that team.
What a
Unbelievable.
job, yeah.
That's the head coach of the Hurricanes. So let's move on to the Western Conference
do it.
here. And how about those St. Louis Blues? How about them? Their season appeared to be lost in the new year. I mean, they had the worst record in the league. The worst record in the league, which is amazing.
Not just the conference,
I mean,
the league.
Exactly. They just made a coaching change, and they were bringing up a rookie goalie in Binnington.
Yeah.
And now they're in the conference finals. That's amazing, isn't
It's
it?
one of the most remarkable turnaround stories, not just in hockey, but in all of sports
I
in recent
agree.
years. And here's the crazy thing. I got numbers.
Joe,
I
I
got
like
numbers.
it. He's got the numbers,
I got
folks.
numbers. When Mike Yeo was fired, they were 7-9-3, so not good. But even when they brought on Craig Berube, they still went only 3-5-1 in their first 9 games. But it was not until, and you mentioned it, when they called up Jordan Binnington.
That's right.
He's a young guy, but he's not a young guy. He's 25. So he toiled in the minors for a couple of years. They bring him up, and this guy just took off. And from the time that they called him up, in 43 games, 29-9-5, the best record in the NHL. Better than Tampa, better than Boston, better than Calgary, the best record in the league. And like you said, here they are in the conference final. And sometimes it's one player. It just takes a little bit of magic. Andrew Hammond, the Hamburglar for Ottawa a couple of years ago.
Remember him?
Same thing.
Yeah.
Kind of a journeyman guy. He got called up, caught fire, and they took it all the way to Game 7 of the conference final.
But what's interesting is they're taking on a San Jose Sharks team who, again, similar to the Boston Bruins, has that experience. They're kind of comeback kids themselves.
Yeah.
I mean, they were rallying down from a 3-1 deficit in the first round against the Golden Knights.
The defending
conference champs.
Yeah.
That's right. Yeah, in their expansion year. Then they were without Joe Pavelski, their captain, for the first 6 games of their 7-game series in the second round.
Yeah.
I mean, and then he came back, of course, in Game 7, had a goal and an assist.
Yeah.
Who do you like in this series? I mean, you got the hottest team in the league versus a team that's resilient.
If you give me a coin, I'll flip it, because that's how I look at this series. I mean, two very evenly matched teams. San Jose better offensively, St. Louis better defensively. They played 3 times in the regular season. There was 1-1-1. Each team went against the other. But 2 of those games came before the coaching change and before Jordan Binnington got called up. So this is a completely different blue squad now that San Jose is going to see, as opposed to back in November. For the simple reason that San Jose has home ice, I'm going with them. I think they're still smarting from that finals loss 3 years ago to the Penguins, the only finals appearance in franchise history. Guys like Thornton and Pavelski and Couture and Burns, that's that veteran core. They know the window is closing. They want to get it done this year. Not to take anything away from what St. Louis has done, but I give a slight edge to San Jose. I think they make the finals again.
Oh, this was so much fun. Why does this segment have to end? It flew by for us, folks. I'm sure it flew by for you guys at home as well. Matt Waymeyer, we're so happy to have you here as our sports insider on the Pulse, and he will be back. I will bring him back. We'll talk about the Stanley Cup finals and everything else, I swear. When we come back, we're going to pry Josh off the grill because he's got another segment to do. Stay tuned for our second of 2 Politics with Peter B segments. We will be right back. Peter Biancamano here of the Pulse of Peter B. Folks, get on our YouTube channel in case you missed any of our 20-something shows that we've done, and even our webisodes. They're all stored there. Go on there, subscribe to us. This way we can tell you when our new shows that are posted and our webisodes are posted. And of course, you can always rewatch or binge watch those shows and get the pulse on everything you need to know. Welcome back to the Pulse of Peter B. I'm your host, Peter Biancamano, and as promised, Josh Sotomayor Einstein is back for our bonus Politics with Peter B segment. And he went back to grill in our last segment. Were the burgers and the dogs burnt?
No, you weren't on the grill, so they're good.
Oh, there's the first diss of the segment.
Boppity-boopity.
Boppity-boopity, he says, too. He's in a good mood. He must be drinking back there, too, I swear.
No alcohol.
No alcohol, he says. So, Josh, this week there were 2 interesting events that happened in our Mile Square city here of Hoboken, and besides the phone poll that we spoke about earlier. The first is on Wednesday, Mayor Bala announced a launch of an Adopt a Pet waste station. The stations, which will include a starter supply of pet waste bags, will be purchased and installed by the city free of charge to property owners or condominium associations who pledge to maintain and refill the station with bags. I know you're dying to answer this question. I know you are, because it is a little hypocritical, this whole initiative, with the single-use plastic bag ban the city just enacted, correct?
Yeah, 100% correct. In and of itself, there's nothing wrong with encouraging responsible pet ownership amongst the city's many dog owners.
Many.
Yeah, many. But the reality is that dog owners already have poop bags. B, it is completely hypocritical for the city to encourage, essentially the use of more plastic bags when that are by definition single use. These are by definition, you do not use these poop bags. Again, they are literally poop bags that you then throw out. They are single use. When hundreds of dog owners in this town used to use their quote-unquote single-use supermarket bags, to bring home groceries and then to pick up their dog poop, and they are now not able to do that, is more proof that the administration and the city council themselves, much like a poop bag, were full of when they called grocery bags single-use bags, because the reality is people use them multiple times, especially hundreds of dog owners across the city use them, to pick up their dog's poop, and now the city council is pushing more plastic, and it just shows how they ignore, the actual nitty-gritty of running a city for what looks good. And again, in and of itself, there's nothing wrong with encouraging responsible pet ownership.
But I was going to ask you that. Do you actually believe that this is going to eliminate a really big issue here in Hoboken, and that's either dog owners or dog walkers from not picking up after their animals?
No, because most of them, the people that leave their dog feces on the ground either have run out of bags and there's none near them, and having one every other block isn't going to really alleviate that. One free dispensary of bags isn't going to really relieve that. Or they just don't give a crap. And the person that doesn't care about their community...
There's been a lot of good words here from Josh today.
The person that doesn't care about their community isn't going to start caring about their community because the city is pushing more plastic. The reality is most dog owners, most dog walkers are responsible. It is a very annoying thing. I myself have walked and slipped in poop before. And it is a horrible thing, and you are filled with anger, and you hate the world when that happens. But there are other bread and butter issues, like the quality of life, like the empty storefronts on the avenue, like the insane taxes that we pay in this town, the insane rents that we pay in this town. There are other bread and butter issues which the city council and the mayoral administration have continued to ignore, and they're just doing what feels good at the moment. And one moment banning plastic bags and calling them single use when by definition they are not single use, and then the next moment, a couple weeks later, encouraging a different type of plastic bag. That's the definition of a city council that is like a crap bag, like a crap bag full of crap.
I knew he would love this topic. Well, why don't we get to the other event that happened this week in the city of Hoboken, and this one was interesting. You had 6th Ward Councilwoman, also our council president and your councilwoman, Jen Giattino, and 2nd Ward Councilwoman, my council person, were at City Hall looking into a matter involving the potential eviction of a Hoboken resident from his home when either they were kicked out, according to their statements, or asked to leave politely without an appointment, according to the city statements. So what's going on here? Do elected officials have the right to go into City Hall if they're polite?
Well, so first let me state clearly and unequivocally that I am not a cheerleader for either Councilwoman Giattino or Councilwoman Fisher. However, aside from the fact that the war of press releases and statements was very entertaining on HMAG and Hoboken Horse to read, very fun stuff to read, and very immature of the administration to keep on responding. Aside from that, I think the councilwomen were in the right. They are our elected officials. They are elected to run and facilitate government, and they were engaging in constituent services. Now, whether or not that constituent's case has merit or not, that's completely irrelevant. But
I
we
don't think
elect.
that's what City Hall was saying. I think City Hall was saying that they were almost harassing city workers for information. I mean, and that's my whole point about being polite. I mean, you know, we understand that the city probably shouldn't have responded through social media, but if they have also an obligation to protect their employees, correct?
Listen, if the council people were impolite, then you know that's one thing. But at the same time, we don't know. We weren't there, and just goes to show you that whether it's the anti-administration or the administration camp, both sides are super immature and will engage each other in the worst possible way. You know, so let's assume that the administration was right, you know, and that the councilwomen were a little bit aggressive, right? So you don't end up with a war and dueling public statements. You move on. And that's what everybody that watches this show in their professional life, when they're at a job, has had to move on, leave something that they felt that they were right, because there were other issues, there were other things that needed to get done. It distracted from the big picture. And you have this situation where these two warring camps can't get their heads out of their butts, and they just continue to not move on and continue to ignore the problems facing our city. And they just really like butting heads because they think it gives them attention, and they think that it builds their standing in their respective spheres.
And that's exactly what I was going to ask you. This has to be another example of kicking off the ward races in November, obviously. You know, we spoke about this earlier, but my goodness, I just feel as politics is just so ugly in our city right now that ultimately, you know who suffers the most? The residents, right or wrong?
100% correct, because again, the bread and butter issues that we talked about before continue to get ignored. When things do get done, like Washington Street, they're done horribly, they're done inefficiently, and they take a billion years to actually, you know, Washington Street isn't even
still
finished.
Not done yet, no. I live on Uptown Washington Street and it's still not done
But
yet.
when it comes to the symbolic politics of the plastic bags, they're like, oh, let's make statements. When it comes to fighting each other, let's make statement after statement. When it comes to actually addressing the issues facing our town, they're quiet.
Yeah, that's fantastic. Well, Josh Sotomayor Einstein, he had to get off the grill to come join us for 2 segments today. We really appreciate your time.
Always my
As
pleasure.
always, talking about the polling being done, the Adopt a Pet waste station being done here in Hoboken, and of course, the whole controversy surrounding 2 council people being kicked out of City Hall. Folks, next week we are at the Arts and Music Festival. We will be joined by Daria De Lucia of At Hoboken Eats. It was supposed to be scheduled a few weeks ago, but as people hopefully paid attention on our Facebook page, the city had to cancel it because of inclement weather. So make sure if you're going to be at the festival, you know, come say hi to us. You'll finally meet Greg, our camera person. I'm sure he's dying to meet you guys. And we will be going from vendor to vendor, trying out different delicacies of the festival. And of course, folks, do not forget to join us, as I said, next week at the Arts and Music Festival, and then in the future for more episodes of The Pulse with Peter B. We want to thank you for joining us this week. Have a great week, and we'll see you soon.